right, good morning, everybody. We'll call this morning's meeting to order. Our first item is the approval of the agenda, and I see we have one agenda addition, and that's the ratification of support service contract with Strategic Technologies.
Move to approve with addition.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Next, we have a couple of employee recognitions this morning. Test. Yeah. It's working? Okay. All right, our first longevity award this morning goes to Randy Carlson. Randy, come on. Randy, this is presented in grateful recognition for 25 years of outstanding and dedicated service to Clay County. Thank you for, on behalf of all of our citizens, for the work you've done. Thank you, Randy. And then there's that. And Dave, do you want to come up and...
Randy has been with us for 25 years. He's got a total of 37 years experience, and he just takes care of all of our projects. He's a very steady worker with a ton of experience. I remember the very first day I started at Clay County 16 years ago, Randy brought me over here and kind of showed me around, and he continues to show and teach me things every day, and I sure appreciate working with him every day. Thanks, Randy.
Very good. Thank you, Randy. Next, we have somebody who's been around a couple of years, Lori. Lori, congratulations on your first 30 years.
Hopefully there won't be another.
Brian, would you like to comment? I know we all, our entire board really appreciates all that you do, and you know, it's clear we always get you and your staff, you know, through our audit system. We always get fantastic reports, and the people of Clay County should be very proud of what you do. Thank you. Brian, do you want to? Thank you. You're not clapping for him.
Yes, I really would like to say something.
Okay.
It's nice of you to say something nice about her, though.
We took the day off yesterday to prepare these remarks.
Yes, I did. No, I do truly want to thank Lori for all of her help. You know, we talk often about the team effort around here, and you know, you'll see NBA teams and other things where they'll have a player coach. Well, Lori surely is a player coach. I go down there and she's working on the details of everything financial, it seems like. Yes, she has a great crew to work with, but they're led by an excellent coach. That is amazing. Did I get that in?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Was this rehearsed?
Yeah, this is rehearsed. Yeah, well, no, but you know, when it comes to the budget, and I think you said it well. You have a very comfort zone knowing that she is looking after things, and she will call out anybody that is in error. So on behalf of Colleen and I, we would like to present Lori with this gift of money as well. I guess I'll let you go.
Thank you. Oh, $400
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'll cherish this forever.
Thank you, Lori. You really do.
I might like to add on, you know, Lori, your work on helping us stay in line with these two biggest projects that Clay County's done in a very, very long time financially has been outstanding, and thank you for that as well. So. Okay, we'll move on to citizens to be heard. Looks like all of our citizens are leaving. All right, seeing there are no citizens to be heard, we'll move on to the approval of the bills and vouchers.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Then we have the minutes from November 21st and the 28th.
Move approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Additions, corrections. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Our 8:35 item is the budget discussion and consideration of adoption of final levy. We have Mr. Berg and Lori Johnson.
Thank you.
Right.
Well, good morning, Mr. Chair. Last meeting, no, the last meeting we had, well, we did have a meeting right before Truth and Taxation. You had wanted to have some discussion, further discussion, before approval of the 2018 budget. And what I passed out to you is just, you have this, I didn't know if you had it along with you today or not, but is the summary of the 2018 tax levy by funds. We also handed out during last Thursday night's meeting the Truth and Taxation documents. If you have that with you, I do have other copies along with that, that has basically any information I would hope that you would want. It shows down a breakdown of the line item of each budget. It shows your revenues and expenses. It shows a history of the revenues and expenses and things along those lines. So I guess today, this is your budget, your discussion. We're here to answer questions and clarify points that you may want to. I think, had an extensive discussion during the process. You heard from most of the departments reference their budgets and their needs. I do think it's interesting that just this morning in the newspaper that Minnesota was rated #1 in the management of its state finances. And you also are well aware that the counties are extension of state government, and we are in partnership with many of their programs. We call them mandates, but they state, and I don't know who does the evaluation. I suppose the article did indicate that, but they did talk about the poverty rate, the unemployment rate, and things along those lines. So I guess what I'm leaning into is I think your departments have discussed with you in detail their needs, and a couple months ago you did support the maximum levy. I know that's not necessarily what you wanted, but there was a lot of discussion in regards to that, and I'll just turn it back over to you folks to do what you want.
Right. I know Commissioner Mojo last week had raised some questions regarding fees. I know you wanted to have a fee discussion on where we're going with that. I don't know if you want to start by making comments on that.
Yeah, if you recall, I'd asked Brian and Colleen to reach out to department heads and see what fees are being collected, if they're mandated by statute in terms of how that fee is set. And I know majority of these fees require staff time to complete, and so my comment was, one, when were the fees set in terms of the fees that this board has control of? And two, have they adequately reflected paying for themselves in terms of how much staff time it takes? And so if COLA increases are set and it's costing more to complete these. I just thought maybe we should have a discussion in terms of if it would be appropriate to look at that. And part of my conversation in this is not to raise taxes all over the board, but I think it's important that we're having whatever jobs are being required help to pay for the staff time that it takes.
All right. Do we have we ever put together something about the total fee revenue that we collect?
Not in such a format that's just charges for services. I haven't done that, but
Okay.
we can
But
do that.
in the audit the audit report we have from the state, it is quite clear that while our budget has increased and levies have increased over the past 4 or 5 years, our services really have not followed that same trend. And so clearly we are requiring more things to be done, and I think they should help pay for themselves.
I know that in the food and lodging piece that goes in there, I know those have been reviewed and have had some increases, but I can't say the same for a lot of the other areas. I know all of our fees associated with solid waste, just recently we made changes to those. But I think it's certainly worthwhile to review some of those and see. I think some of those, you'll have some taxpayers who say, well, part of our service is what we pay in our taxes. You hear that too, but when it's something that is designed to be specific to an organization or something like that, then I think it's their responsibility to also cover the cost of those services. I think that's what Commissioner Mojo is looking for. Are we charging the appropriate, our cost to do something that's specific to an organization or an individual or what have you. So I don't know that that's going to garner a whole lot of additional revenue, but at the same point, it still is, every little bit can help, I guess. So I don't know, Brian, what you would suggest we could do to further research that?
Yeah, well, Mr. Chair, I do have a comment on that regards to, and again, this document that was handed out last Thursday night is where I had attached the state auditor's page, and second to the last page, I had highlighted charges for service. Now, is this totally 100% accurate? I don't know that, and I've stated that before, that this is coming off the auditor's website, and it's the information that they utilize for rating things. But you'll see charges for service that we have 87th out of 87 counties. So we're at the very, very bottom, and I think that was what Commissioner Mojo was referring to during the exit audit that we had on the one-on-one with the state auditor. They had this graph, and they'd mentioned that our charges for services were very low in relationship to others. And as a suggestion, this was put together quite hastily. There's still a couple departments that we need to refine some things on, and you'll notice, as Commissioner Mojo said, she wanted to know when the last service charge was upgraded, let's say, by the county board, and the first two don't indicate that. So we need to do some refining in this, and if you're serious about looking at the fees, you'll see that some are set back in 2006, 2005, that we would certainly work with each of the departments that do charge fees to make a recommendation to you, and it would be, I think it would be a process that's going to take a few months, because they have to evaluate how much revenue is taken in, as the question you just asked Lori, and then see what difference it could make in the next year.
Well, I think that should be a process that could be started the first of the year then.
Sure.
And that way would give department heads, I think each department head knows what areas they have
Absolutely.
fees associated to them, and give them the ample time to provide us the history of those fees maybe. And I don't know, Commissioner Mojo, how far you'd like to go do a look back, if it would be 5 years or what, but what your thoughts are. But
I mean, I think it's obviously in a case by case. The thing that I think of is, I think the assessor's office came to us 6 months ago with a suggestion, and I think the departments can better come up with what they feel is appropriate for how their staff time is spent putting some of this stuff together. And, you know, I don't think it's an immediate solution to something, but I think it's something that at least garners a good look.
Very good. Lori, I had a couple of questions for you on this document.
Okay.
I noticed that we have an interest line item under revenues, and I see that there's no interest that is put in for the internal service fund. Does it all go into the general?
All goes into the general, because we don't have any investments currently with our internal service fund.
Okay, so everything, even though we have dollars set aside for internal,
Right.
the interest on those dollars are shown in the general?
Right.
Okay, all right. And do we have, for public health, what's our increase in, have we seen some increase in revenues in the last year, 2 years?
I mean, it does steadily increase, you know, and for public health, it kind of goes like this, because if they have a fund balance or a revenue over expenditure for a year, then we cut back on what we give them. But then the next year, it'll go like this, and then if they go revenues over expenditures again, then we cut it back for that exact amount.
Yeah, I noticed for the year ending 2016, they were a negative 338,000.
We had an adjustment, a one-year adjustment to recognize benefits, and we had that, and that really affected the enterprise funds.
Okay.
On that particular page. It didn't affect the other funds so much, but for public health and solid waste and juvenile detention. Juvenile detention, you'll notice, also had, they have a negative now too. Maybe it doesn't show on that one, but they're.
No, this one doesn't.
They have
show.
an overall positive, but their reserved fund balance or available for cash flows is a negative now. Since that one-time journal entry, which is actually just a paper journal entry, but it's required that we make it, so.
Well, you know, after listening, you know, we didn't have as many people here at that Truth and Taxation as I thought there was going to be based on the phone calls we had, and as we saw that night, most of them were related to valuation issues, and they're upset because they had a really high increase in their valuations, but at the same point in time when that happens, you have a really high or much higher tax burden that goes along with that. And you know, a perfect example of I now have a small residence in North Moorhead, and in the last 2 years, my taxes have exceeded 50%. Real estate, just the county portion of those taxes have exceeded 50%. You know, that gets to the concern of what I've always talked about. You know, we have to help these. Our responsibility through the state is to help the people where we need help. But at some point in time, what are these increases costing the people who are on fixed income? That was a question that was perfectly asked, I thought, by somebody here, and that's the catch-22 that we're in these things. But I know, part of the reason of mine looking back is, of course, then the values on my property also increased, and that's great if you're in the mood to sell. But if you're not in the mood to sell and you're still having to make those payments, it's tough for the person on a fixed income. And I don't know what the answer is, because we don't stop and or increase costs. So.
Well, Mr. Chair, a response to that is we enjoy seeing our assets increase in value. Mm-hmm. It's the Minnesota taxing system that relies on property tax for local entities. Mm-hmm. And as we talked about last Thursday night, on a $150,000 value, the county's portion went up $15.82. The school
if your valuation stayed the same.
If your valuation stayed the same,
mm-hmm.
went up $19.73, and the city of Moorhead, as an example, went up $29.31, just about double what the county is. So when you're looking at those statements for this, the school went up more and the city went up just about double of the county.
Well, I agree with that.
Yeah.
You know, it still is an overall increase to everybody.
Absolutely.
And that's the part, you know, that's the part where, you know, 2 years ago, we held a joint meeting of the cities and the schools in the county at the MCOP Center, and part of the reason for that was to kind of collaborate and to know what each of us are doing so that we could probably avoid having these things happen that happened this year. And really, there's nothing from a major capital improvement issue on the part of any entity that caused this either. The school district, you know, the bond referendum, you know, that they just passed, you know, that was supposed to be just to keep things as they were. You know, so there's no, and there's nothing in our 4.71% net increase that has to do with construction of our projects either, because, you know, we've been able to manage that so far outside of that, so I
think part of the conversation is that valuation piece, understandably, is when it gets tricky. And I think maybe we need to have an honest conversation. If we're unaware that there are $100,000 increases in 1 year happening on a project, that takes a 4.7 and makes it, you know, 40%, you know.
Right.
And so I think,
Right.
you know, we have to have an honest conversation about if we want to set a limit as to kind of a matter of practice that a property can't swing so much either way in a year, and that's a different conversation than this, but it really does play into the 20 phone calls that I've had in the last 3 weeks on the tax value. You know, when you look at what our increase is, it is not as low as it would be nice to have it at, but when you don't know that assessments are so much higher, that really makes it problematic for people.
I agree with that, and I think there was a gentleman at the Truth and Taxation hearing, or a young lady that was here, one of the two of them had mentioned, you know, don't you as commissioners get warnings of these large valuation adjustments? And I think there's a lot of merit in, you know, talking with our assessor's office. Brian, I know I've talked with you after that, and I think we should get some sort of mechanism in place where our board can be aware of those major valuation changes far ahead of when we hear about it at Truth and Taxation time, or even when it comes to, you know, when they go out in March, for example, when they go out, we should be aware at that time, what areas, is there a certain portion of the county or something? It's like they said, we got no warning of this. The residents got no warning of it. And I truly believe the statement that goes out, Lori, that has the proposed, I know that that's all kind of somewhat mandated in what you can put on there. But there always is that confusion where they don't recognize that as their time to do it. And we got to look at I don't know if we could, how we can change that.
I think it kind of says it, you know, pretty distinctly on that valuation notice. The tax statement and the valuation notice go up together.
Right.
And so I think it's pretty distinct on that. Now, this is the time for you to, you know.
But I don't know if it's, you know, but for one thing, the one person that I showed him mine, and he actually didn't understand what levy versus value meant.
Right.
Evaluation meant. Because on there, it's this is the time to question your levy, or this is the time to question your valuation, and he didn't, you know, he can't be alone then.
Yeah.
You know, so that's what we need to do something there.
Well, and Mr. Chair, it goes back to what we've talked about over the years is, and I know this is very basic stuff, so I'm not I don't want to preach on this is just an educational thing. I think the people look to government to be fairly smooth flowing, not to see high and lows out of government, and that's what Commissioner Mojo was talking about as well. And I know the explanation for the high increases was a change in software, but that isn't what we want to hear.
No.
And I don't want to hear that when I go to someone for an explanation. We need to monitor that closer. But the truth of it is, we have 3 assessors for 15,000 rural parcels and another 15,000 in the city. It's pretty difficult for them to do things manually, maybe like they did 30 years ago, and now they'll change software. The new software takes into account different things to create the value, and it wasn't considering this in the past. But we've got to figure out a layman's explanation for that so that we don't have those huge jumps, and we don't say, you know, it's somebody else's fault. It's not somebody else's fault. It's something that we are in charge of, and you expect us to answer that. So we're going to work on that and figure out how we can smoothen those peaks out.
I don't know if we can, in addition to what we do, if we can put out some sort of a public service announcement, hey, to make sure you watch for your valuation statements type of thing. We do public announcements for crying out loud when we deal with recycling and things like that, so I think anything that we can do to help get our taxpayers to understand key times. They do have responsibilities too. They do. Each and every one of us who are property owners have responsibilities, but if you don't know, or if you're confused on the appropriate time to be able to go and appeal or ask questions as to why your valuation, especially the way they changed this year, some of them.
And contrary sometimes to popular belief, the public does trust us to do things fairly. And then when they see these drastic moments, then they get suspicious and say, jeepers, why are my taxes going up? They may not question the value. They liked it low. But when it takes a huge jump, and that's what we have to smoothen out, I think. We have to be constantly conscious of that smooth flowing cost figure. And I guess that's why even on last Thursday night, I pointed out that over the last 27 years, the average increase in levy has been 5.78. This year, going into 2018, what the suggestion is, or what the maximum levy was set at, was 6.2, which is very close to the 5.87. So it's that smooth flowing flow that you need. If you drop much and reduce services, and I'll just use this as an example, the city is about double of what ours is. They've been taking a pretty conservative approach, and I know they made it some huge increases in their pay this going into 2018, because they'd done some salary studies and things. Well, now it's catch-up time, and we don't want to be in that position. We want to stay with that smooth flowing. So.
Brian, do you want to touch a little bit with us, because we've since we've passed our preliminary levy, we learned some information regarding tax court on an issue and how that impacts, because obviously it would have been nice to see us try to still adjust this prior to the end of the year. I'm one who would be in favor of trying to reduce it, but also since we did this, we've had some not so good news in terms of how an impact to our budget. Would you please share with us with that?
Well, I think what you're talking about is the tax decision by the
Burlington
state
Northern.
in reference to Burlington Northern's
Right.
valuation of Clay County.
Right.
And it was just around $12 million, I think $11.9 million worth of valuation reduction. Now, sometimes in a tax court, if we look back and we say it was overvalued, we have to actually pay back taxes that are overpaid. That's not the case in this one. So this is going forward. But what it does mean is that there is $12 million worth of value that was on Burlington Northern, that they were paying tax on, that they will not pay tax next year on
It's a
that
tax,
12.
it's a tax shift to everybody else.
It's yes, it's a valuation, and then it's a tax
Valuation shift to everybody else.
That's
Or
exactly
everybody
right.
else's percentage goes up, because of they're no longer valued at what they were.
That's exactly
And
right.
so what was that, I think, Lori, I saw a memo that you said that it was,
About $2.25 for 100, for basically any property would be that
Okay.
much.
So,
just
there-
one little
Little bit,
tax court
150,
case.
and then it just slightly increases to like $3 and 1
So
cent.
one little $11 million valuation thing
Yep.
is costing every property owner or homeowner $2.25.
Right.
that's the shift. And it's the same with, I'll go back with and you've talked about this, you've renewed it several times, and that is the tax abatement on new properties. That is costing us just under $500,000, I think $460,000 next year, that the person pays in the tax and then we rebate it back. And that's an incentive
But I
to build.
don't see that as costing us, because, that's a 2-year deal, and every year now we have one coming off and obviously some new ones coming on, but the same processes, we're having an awful lot of more valuation that's paying tax too, so.
Oh, yes, absolutely. But it is a valuation shift for
Yeah.
that year, though.
Yeah.
So it works in the same process, so.
Any other questions by board
I
members?
just, that railroad tax shift, it makes a difference of about 180 grand a year for us.
2.25.
Yeah, yeah,
2.25.
and it's even worse because it's commercial, so it's, the class rate is the 2%
Oh, yeah,
instead of the
that's a good
1%.
point. That's right.
That would be resident, so if
That's a
it's
good
11
point.
million of residential, it would be less.
So in terms of total dollars, as Commissioner
For us.
Haney's asking, for Clay County, it's
Yeah, I suppose it would be,
over 200,000?
yeah.
Yeah.
Said about
Yeah.
225,000.
Yeah, that'd be about right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think it's probably not anymore, but at one point in time, we were 250,000, we looked at as being a 1%
And
of our
now it's
levy.
about 300,000
Yeah,
for
now
1%.
but it's still 0.75%.
Yep, oh, yes, yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
All right, do we have any other questions by board members on the levy today? I'm not ready.
No.
To pass it,
I don't have anything
We don't
ready for
have
you
it.
to pass.
good.
Yeah. We knew you were going to have discussion, and we wanted to answer any questions that you may have, and we also talked about time schedule last time. Now it's the 12th today. We
Yep,
have the
2 more.
19th and then the 26th, but we'd like to bring the document in on the 19th for consideration. and then-
Could you, at the same time, Lori, could you provide us with the latest up-to-date, year-to-date 2017
Sure.
numbers? I'd like to review that one last time, too, before we, all right?
Another question on wind energy, is that proving to be fairly close to our estimates?
Just about right on, yep. Yeah, was up a little bit from what we estimated, which is good, but I don't anticipate that it should vary much at all from that.
My other statement is, can you send out to department heads communications so that I'd like to start those discussions on these service fees as close to the first of the year as possible?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I think that was the general feeling, is that you'd like to look at those, so.
I don't know if another commissioner wants to do that too.
Well, I think we all want to see the,
Well, I see a lot of them are mandated by the state, not a lot, but there's a bunch of them that are mandated, but they don't have a choice on them,
No.
But when I see some of them that have been changed since 2005, I mean, are we taking a look at them in a yearly basis or every 5 years or something like that, so. Probably it's time to look at them, it's just, but I think that is an individual department's responsibility as part of their job, to look at their fees, are they what they're supposed to be, and when there hasn't been adjustments since 2005, I don't know. Probably aren't being looked at as much as they should be.
And two, that's kind of at the direction of our board too, if we're not directing that those be looked at and correlated with staff time that it may take, I mean, staff aren't gonna necessarily look at them unless we're directing it.
All right, any other questions this morning regarding the, all right, thank you, Lori.
Thank you,
Brian. All right, our 905 item is a request to fill 3 vacated positions in public health. Kathy.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I brought the 2 supervisors that are in charge of the requests that we're making.
So the first question that I would ask is, why 3 resignations at one time? That's,
You know, and the answer would be, it must be, no, I'm kidding. The nurse one that I'm passing around now, her family is moving.
Okay.
And, you know, she and her family are moving, so that is the reason why we have that resignation. And maybe we'll just start with that, because the other 2 are the, with Troy's detox program. So this is a case management assessor position, and she's full-time, and I mentioned she's moving. So this is a position that needs to be filled. As we talked before, you approved filling 2 other positions, a retirement and another position that a person was leaving. And they're funded through the health plans, their case management services, they're fully funded, and the caseloads are extremely high, so we need the number of public health nurses that we have currently. So this is to replace the one that will be leaving shortly. And it's full-time. And as you can see, with the savings, there may be some savings, but as you're aware, it's really difficult to recruit those registered nurses, 4-year degree nurses. So we'll see where we can find one to replace this one. Any questions about that, or questions for Jamie?
questions? When is this opening?
Our last day of work is the 22nd of December, and I believe her official day is January 2nd.
Okay. All right. Why don't we act on this one by itself?
I'll move to approve the position.
We have a motion, and is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That's always the same. Motion carried. All right, Troy, you've got a couple in your area, huh?
Yeah,
I see you have a little sling on. Did you have an accident?
rotator cuff.
Oh,
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it.
I'm supposed to have it done.
Really?
Yeah, so I'm trying to avoid it.
His first
So
day
it's
back.
not that bad, right? Yeah.
It's,
I won't tell you what he said on the stairs.
I required him to come back just for this meeting.
if you can sleep in a recliner, you'll be just fine, but
Yeah.
sleeping is the issue.
Yeah, okay.
Who needs sleep?
Well, I hope things get better for you soon.
Yeah, I feel pretty good, actually.
Okay, very good. All right.
And in Troy's absence, we had 2 resignations from his area, both LPNs. Didn't we give both of those pass? I think Whitney's, I think that one was a passed around. Was this?
This one went that way.
Okay,
This one
so
is-
we have 2, we'll have 2 LPN full-time openings.
What was the reason?
And as we had talked about before, we'll be entering our withdrawal management licensure in 2019, which will require us to have LPNs on every shift. That'll be the minimum standard. And so we need to fill the 2 LPN positions. Whitney, the one that I passed around, we moved her to a .8 only because she either had to have a .8 or she had to resign. And then we filled that extra .2 with a variable hour. We were able to get a variable hour to fill that .2 to make it 1 FTE. So our replacement is to hire 1 FTE for both positions. And we don't know, as far as the LPN,
So Kathy, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
Go ahead.
the one that was the .8 and you had 2.2, does the .8 still receive full benefits, or do they receive .8 benefits?
0.8 benefits, correct.
So now you're going to a full,
Full-time.
so that will increase, so when,
That'll increase the
is that,
benefits.
this annual savings, is that built in, does that include the additional .2 benefits too, or, I see Darren back there shaking his head
Yeah.
no?
No, I think the annual savings was based on replacing it. I just put that one FTE in there, just to show that if they did want to go with only one FTE, that would be the cost of it.
Okay, so,
He has that.
so what we're looking at based on the request, so you would you would drop the variable hour,
Correct.
right? And then
yes.
you'd go with but then we're looking at that .2 additional benefits cost to the county, which then that would probably reduce that,
The savings.
that 10,900 savings by, what I'm guessing, a couple $1,000.
Well, and she's on step 4, so if we hire someone at a lower step, we'll have
Okay,
savings with that.
Okay.
Did you say why we have 2 people in one department leaving at the same time?
Mostly, it's a tough position, the amount of verbal abuse that these guys take from the clients, I think is a big reason for these two. I believe Whitney's looking at possibly moving. She's mentioned that a few times. The other one is, nurses are a competitive field. I mean, these guys are moving around all the time, taking jobs, and so I think that's part of the other.
It's always been the case with detox
It has
positions.
been.
They're tough to.
The clients are tough and,
Yeah.
they're difficult at best when they come in and they're under the influence and,
It takes a pretty special person to
Yeah.
work with and be able to be called names all day long, be verbally abused,
and sometimes physically abused. There's times
and
where
they get violent.
Well,
It's a tough area.
I think it was an important question to ask. I think
Yes, absolutely.
It's unfortunate that, and I think you're right, it takes a certain type of person to be able to take that crap day in, day out. And I say that,
No,
that's
that's
crap,
true.
but.
Very true.
Did we put that on the job description?
We could add that too.
Well, and I think on the other hand too, though, I think that people probably don't apply because it is a detox type position. I think that when a lot of people get into the position, they really, you either love it or you don't.
Yeah.
And a lot of people get into the position, love it, stay, they want to make a career out of it, so.
Well, these are areas that we have to have. It's kind of a vital service, I think, that if we're gonna have a detox facility, we gotta have it properly staffed, so.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2 positions.
I'll second it.
There's a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As it relates to what we're talking about in hires here, we've been talking about the budget stuff. I think going into the first of the year, we should be having conversations about hiring. And I guess I'm more concerned right now with new hires than I am with existing. So I think we're going to have a conversation at what point in time, with our levies increasing the way they are, do we kind of have to slow down the new hires? So I'm hoping we can have that conversation as part of our planning for 2018. All right, we'll move on to item number 4, a review and approval of Minnesota Family Investment Program. Rhonda, good morning, Rhonda.
I have Larry Young with me today. He's the supervisor in our income maintenance unit. This is a program of our income maintenance unit.
Good morning, Larry.
Good morning.
Teresa Hazeman from rural Minnesota SEP was going to join us, but I'm not, she must have got caught up somewhere, so we'll just move forward. Okay, so our MFIP, so MFIP stands for Minnesota Family Investment Program. DWP stands for Diversionary Work Program. It's a cash grant program that the county administers for low-income families in our county. It's primarily federal funds, but there's some state funds in this program as well. So low-income families come into our office and apply for this program, and Larry's staff administer the eligibility. The counties all receive what's called MFIP consolidated funds, and that's what this plan is related to. So every 2 years, they indicate an allocation for the counties, and then we're required to complete a plan. That plan was completed and it was included in your packets. It's been posted on our website for the last 30 days. It does require a 30-day public comment period. That's been completed, and we're required to then submit that to the State Department of Human Services, and then they approve it, or sometimes they might offer some feedback for us, some things to consider. So today we're seeking approval of the board to submit the plan as written, and then if there's any adjustments, we would make that through Department of Human Services. Just a little bit of a...
Rhonda, before you go, is this the area that your Department of Human Services was looking, is this the one that went through a formula change not too long ago?
No.
Or am I thinking of something else then?
Yeah, no, that's probably something else.
Okay.
This formula, as you can see in the attachments for Clay County, I think I did attach the statewide allocations because I thought it was kind of interesting. Clay County does receive a substantial amount, little over $1.1 million, and this is annually. Our plan covers 2 years. This formula is based on 15 years ago, 2002, they had a formula. And so the current allocation is based on, 50% is based on that formula from 2002 base allocation, and the other 50% is based on workload characteristics. So, good morning, Teresa. That's okay. So our allocation does change a bit over the years, but we, first and foremost, very good. We just started. So the allocation has been fairly consistent, but one of the things required is if we as a county don't spend all of the allocation, so we earn it based on our expenditures, so it might be that we don't earn it all based on our expenditures, but also they look at our allocation based on our utilization of the funds. So it certainly is to our advantage to make sure that the funds that we get it out to our families, to our low-income families, to make sure that we're addressing the needs. The most of these funds are allocated for work. What do we do to address barriers to employment, barriers to furthering education, barriers to, people being self-sufficient and gainfully employed. And that's why a large chunk of these funds do go to rural Minnesota SEP, and they work with all of our families who are on diversionary work and the MFIP employment program. So there's really 3 areas these funds are allocated for. The first one is our emergency assistance. So that is a plan that you review periodically. It's incorporated in the plan that was submitted in your packet. And that's for individuals who come into our agency and they have an emergency. So there's eligibility requirements. We look at what's the emergency. Larry's staff apply the policy that the board has set. So it's often used for things like eviction notices.
Eviction notices and utility shutoffs are primary. I think it was 182 families that we helped last year, and a majority of those were utility shutoffs.
So helping with heat and...
Yep. They just didn't keep up to their bills, and They do need to meet a 40%, so we look at their income that they've had over the last 60 days to determine where they're using that money, and then we can help with emergency assistance. Generally, if they're on one of the cash grants, we then vendor the payment to the utility company or to the landlord so that it is to try to help the situation so that they don't fall into a position where they have another shut off or another eviction notice.
I was just wondering whether that's a continuous payment or.
It's a one-time thing. I mean,
It's just a
once
one-time
every
thing.
12 months, a family's able to come in and apply for emergency assistance. And so if they come in and we approve them today, they can't come back in until December 12th of 2018.
But when you say for utilities, give me enough for 12 months of utilities?
No, what happened is you just got an eviction or a shut-off notice from the utility company, and it says they need to pay $300 to get their utilities back on. We would pay the utilities shut-off $300, and they would be expected. We look at it that it's cost-effective. So again, we will help you if you've spent your percentage, 40% of your income over the last 60 days, but we also look at it and say your utilities and your rent are X amount of dollars, and your income moving forward is enough to pay that. And so we would pay your utilities, to keep your utilities on today, but be expected that next month when you get your utility bill that you be able to pay it.
So for example, with those notices, we're not going to authorize funds if the individual cannot maintain it into the future. That doesn't make sense. So the other thing, as Larry said, is that it is a every 12-month kind of thing. Now, we do have some individuals that kind of keep track of that, and every 12 months we see them. So some of the things that we're doing differently is we're requiring referrals to Lakes and Prairies for financial literacy. We want to beef that up a bit this next year and that's group financial literacy. We want to refer for some individual budgeting for families that we tend to see routinely, so that we can address the issue and not face it every 12 months with them.
That kind of plays over to different departments though too, in terms of child custody. If heat is shut off, that then could start in motion an out-of-home placement issue, correct?
Yes.
So, I mean, while it is only a one-time thing, that could take the cycle of taking a child out of the home that we're going to have to pay for anyways.
Yep, absolutely. And the bottom line in our policy, it has a statement about there's exceptions to this policy per department head and supervisor review. So you've allowed that in our policy because for those very exact reasons. It might be 6 months ago we helped a family, but now we have a family with 5 children and they're evicted and we've got issues. And so there's some discretion we use that if we know it's going to prevent an out-of-home placement or we've got safety of kids in mind, we will do some unique approvals. So.
Larry, you had mentioned that somebody would come to you. Do they come to you after they've already been shut off?
Generally, yeah.
Okay, so
because the definition of an emergency is that you've been evicted, or you've gotten the eviction notice, or you've gotten the utility shut off.
Okay, so on the utility shut off, then when you gave the example of somebody had $300 bill that you would pay the $300 for them on a one-time basis, knowing the fact that they've proven that they can continue making the payments going forward. How much of that $300 is a reconnection fee? Do you guys check into that at all?
I don't know what the percentage is, but yes, that is probably one of the biggest.
Yeah, and that's a really unfortunate deal because it's like it's money just being thrown away. And I don't know if there's something that can be looked into there where that we this is an issue that all taxpayers one way or another are paying for this reconnection fee, and if it's something that's really out of the control of an individual, I would certainly like to see some sort of a discussion with with the public service boards that govern them or something to see about a waiver of that reconnection fee in some of those cases. I think that would be good for all the taxpayers to not have to pay that.
Yes.
So I don't know if that's ever been researched or questioned, but I think it should be.
Yeah, you did have a member of Moore Public Service within this last year meet with your financial workers, more to iron out some other issues, but.
It never really fell through, I mean, it never transpired
Oh,
anything.
Right, and I know Lakes
I
and
think we need-
Prairies has had a lot of conversation with Moore Public Service in terms of some of those bills were kind of encompassing with water, and that was specifically a problem for payments because they wouldn't separate it out, and so,
Yeah.
you know, I think there's some hard discussions that need to be had, I think, in terms of some of these smaller issues.
I mean,
Yep.
but clearly, if there's a reconnection fee that's easy to determine, they
Yeah.
apply it, you know.
Clear
so,
on, should be clear on the statement.
Yeah,
But then too, playing devil's advocate, if it takes staff time, somebody has to pay for that. And
Yeah.
if we don't collect it in some form, it's gonna be a cost shift to everybody else. I mean, from what I know of electric shutoffs, that reconnection fee is like $20 to $25. It's not something astronomical.
I don't know how significant it is, but it's,
I think they have to pay a month's fee in advance as a deposit or something too, don't they? Isn't that part of that 300?
Yeah.
well, I think it's worthy of a
And
research, I guess.
300 is probably pretty low compared to, I mean, a lot of our utility shutoffs are, that's why a majority of the money that we spent last year was on utilities, and we spent, because of the fact that if we only look back 60 days to see that you met your 40%, but if the utility company hasn't shut you off for 6 months and you haven't paid all of the utilities, it continues to build up, and so the amount of money that we're paying is, which again, devil's advocate, do we want the utility companies to shut the power off so these people don't have a place to live? No. So.
Brenda, do you want to?
Okay, yep, so that is, I'm looking on the second page of the board summary sheet. Kind of in the middle there outlines how we've allocated the $1.1 million. And the first bullet there is the contract with Rural Minnesota SEP, which is $853,217, and I'll let Teresa talk a little bit about that. But then the second bullet there is the emergency assistance plan, which we just talked about. And the third bullet there is income maintenance administration. So that $130,000 is revenue that we earn in administering this program. So we first look at our history of revenue and we plug that in so that we make sure we have enough funds to pay for our staff time in administering it. And then we allocate based on what we have left for the emergency assistance program and for rural Minnesota SEP. So I asked Teresa just to join us, not to have a formal presentation, but to answer any questions and maybe just talk a little bit about when a referral is made to her office, just generally kind of what they do.
Okay, start with the referral process. Okay, somebody comes into the county, they determine the eligibility. And depending on if they're the diversionary work program or the MFIB program, they have different routes that they come. So somebody that's on MFIB, they'll get referred up to us, we'll do an MFIB orientation. This is what MFIB is all about. And one of the things I talk to my staff about is I want them to hear opportunity, because MFIB is so rule-based. Do this or you're going to get a sanction. Do this or you're going to get a sanction. And I really feel like if you let me know what opportunities we can get, I'll get that volunteer type of attitude from our client. And so what we really focus on is career planning. What do you want to do? Because you're coming in here, you might not have had a job for a while. The job market's changing. So doing an assessment about what kind of job they want to do. A lot of them go right into job search. And our job search is basically focused on job keeping, finding, getting, advancing, and leaving a job. So it's a curriculum that they go through. One of the main areas that I like to see our money spent on is classroom training or skill building and work training or OJTs. So somebody that's going on for a short-term education like CDL or welding, we know those are in the labor market demand. I'm sorry, I'm kind of still out of breath a little bit.
Take your time.
It's okay. It's in a labor market demand, so that we know when they finish with their training, they're going to make wages that are self-sustaining for their family. And hopefully we don't get that retention, or that we get the retention back. Same thing with welding. The programs we also like to see funded, nursing, those areas that are in demand. And then we'll have some of the other short-term kinds of trainings and some projects. So for example, right now, I have another project going on with the Afro-American Development Association. And it's a language-based, kind of intensive job search that they're doing, and providing some transportation, some interviewing directly with the employer. So that's some of the projects that we have. We also do supportive service funds, and those supportive service funds are to help people with a car so that they can get back and forth to work, with insurance. And when you talk about insurance, we have to make sure that it is something that they can afford when we're done paying. For example, I just had somebody give me a quote that came in for $1,500 for a car insurance for 6 months. Like, we are not going to pay that kind of insurance for somebody. And ask them to go out and find other things in the, other vendors out there that they might be able to get help with. Work training is a big part of what we're doing right now. And work training is getting somebody connected with an employer. We're their employer of record. We pay their wages, their workers' comp, etc. But they're out on a job site getting job experience. This year, we've also funded a career advising program or project, and we're planning to do it again this coming year. I have an instructor, a career advisor that's actually in the school systems in Barnesville, Moorhead, and Dilworth, Gwynn, and Felton. And their focus is on career advising, helping people determine, are you going to get a job right away when you're done with high school, or go to college? And if you're going to go to college, what are some of the prerequisites that you need to be able to get into that college? And so we're funding part of that with MFIP right now, really again trying to think about how do we prepare you for a job market without a cash assistance program at some point in time. Because we do see people that recycle through the system. We do see people that, a gal came in and she said to me, you were my case manager. I haven't been a case manager for 20 years. And I'm meeting with her daughter now. So now we want to make sure that we can try to give some career advising, help with some planning for your future, and maybe prevent some of that. This year we'll also be helping with some of the funds for security deposits for daycare, because that's also another barrier that's preventing people from getting a job and getting their kids in childcare, and it's very expensive. What we're really working on for performance is considered the self-support index. That is when people have gone off from MFIP and they're working, or they've used 36 months of cash assistance and they're working. And the self-support index is what's being measured right now for us to be able to earn bonuses. And right now in Clay County, we're meeting that. So we'll continue to work on meeting that, and that's retention. It's retention in a job.
So these programs are really about employment? Yes. Yep.
We also know our caseload has changed, and so I have a large caseload that has language barriers. And so we're working a lot with our adult basic education with their language classes. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to hire somebody that speaks Kurdish and Arabic. And I just hired somebody that's starting in January, that speaks Somali. Brand new graduate from college. So, like, how can we start to match our staff with some of the clients that we're working with? So that we've been able to do that.
So the last thing I would just share is last year in 2017, with some of these funds that were allocated to rural Minnesota South, Teresa worked with Ubuntu Consulting, hope I'm saying that right, but anyway, we were involved along with public health and the school district and multiple partners, and there were a number of listening sessions that were held in our county, and the focus was really to look at barriers to self-sufficiency and employment for our new Americans. This doesn't say refugees, it doesn't say immigrants, it's really new Americans, which can be folks that have been here in our community for 20 years. But, so there were a number of listening sessions for folks in our community. There were some provider listening sessions, professional listening sessions. And this document was put together. We are still, as a group, kind of vetting through it, looking at what were some of the things that are going well in terms of self-sufficiency and employment in our county, what are some things that need improvement, and some possible solutions. So I'm going to leave this here and circulate it, but I also do have this electronically to share. But we are going to be working on setting some committee work around this document and kind of vetting through what are some things that we can be focusing on through the MFIP funds to address some of the employment barriers for our new Americans. So I'll leave that here. So what we are looking for as a part of the document, I have to document that this came before the board and that we complied with the 30-day posting period, which we did do, and then it will be submitted to the Department of Human Services for their review. So maybe a motion just to approve the plan for submission would be appropriate.
The biannual service agreement?
Yes.
Right. Before we, Rhonda, the $1,163,467, is that the total dollar amount then that's spent on this program? Are there any additional dollars that are spent?
Nope, this is, nope, there's no other,
So it's strictly state and federal dollars?
Yes,
And then,
yes.
then of course, our staff time, but then that's being paid for out of?
Yep.
That's what the 180,000?
Yep, that's the 130,000. And as Teresa briefly mentioned, bonus funds, if counties meet the performance standards in terms of self-sufficiency and work participation hours, counties have opportunities to earn additional funds, and that's not reflected here. So we are hopeful that we would earn some additional performance funds. And what we would do then is we reinvest that right back into addressing the barriers for that self-sufficiency and employment. So it doesn't require revisions, major revisions of the plan.
Questions?
Motion approved.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second to approve the MFIP biannual service agreement. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, we'll move into our committee reports and administrator update. And
Mr.
we'll
Chair,
start-
do we have an agenda?
Oh, excuse me, yes, I'm sorry. We do have an agenda addition. That's Jenny's. I'm sorry, Jenny.
No, that's fine.
All right, we have a request to ratification of support service contract with Strategic Technologies. Good morning, Jenny.
Good morning. So what we're talking about this morning is our Minnesota County Attorney Practice System. It's our case file database. It was developed approximately 15 to 18 years ago, and it's something that the Minnesota Counties Computer Cooperative and the County Attorneys Association actually owns. We paid for it to be developed, so we have a proprietary interest in it. But what we need to pay for in terms of vendor services every year is support and development with a software company. Since the inception of this program, we have had that contract with a company called DocuTech, and they've provided our support and service for our Minnesota County Attorney Practice System for all these years. A few years ago, probably 2 years, maybe 3 years ago, there's been some discussion in the county attorney world about going from the vendor DocuTech to a different vendor. And of course, that starts with, putting out for some bids, seeing what other companies, if other companies are interested and what other companies can bring to the program, et cetera. We finally reached a point where we feel that it would be beneficial for Minnesota counties to move a different direction with our support and service to our program. And the new vendor that we've been in consultation with is Strategic Technologies Incorporated. And this has been a years-long process, so this isn't any kind of knee-jerk reaction or anything, but we just feel it's time to go a different direction, that this new company can bring us a deeper level of support and development to the product, make it something, better than it is currently. And so as a board, Minnesota County Attorneys Association, and the individual counties each have to elect which service provider they're going to go with. So it's not something that we do as a whole, we do it individually as counties. And so Brian Melton and some additional staff from our office were down, I believe in St. Cloud. We've had a few different meetings for the Minnesota Counties Computer Cooperative on this subject in the last year, going over contracts, going over proposals, et cetera. And it is our decision in the Clay County Attorney's Office that for the year 2018, we would like to enter into a contract with Strategic Technologies Incorporated. And that would go forth from 2018. And a bit unusual, I'm not sure why, we've never had to do this before with Minnesota County's Computer Cooperative, but they have requested board ratification statements from each county if they are going to choose to go with Strategic Technologies. I mean, we sign these contracts every year with DocuTech, and we've never had to get board ratification. It doesn't hurt to get board ratification, but it's just why you've probably never heard of this before. But they are asking that our board ratify the decision of our county attorney's office to enter into a contract with Strategic Technologies for maintenance and support of our county attorney programming system. So that's what I'm seeking today. Our contract, I believe, I'm not sure if you did receive that or not in the packet. It doesn't look like it.
No.
But the contract's been reviewed by Brian, it's been reviewed by myself, it's also been reviewed by the other county attorneys' offices throughout the state. We've got a lot of legal minds looking at it, so we feel comfortable with it. And we feel very excited going forward with Strategic Technologies and feel that they're going to bring some really good things to the table, especially in the vein of e-filing and paperless files, which our county attorney's office is moving towards right now. So it takes a little bit different software when you're not going to have a physical file and you're going to have to bring your computer up to court. And so we're looking forward to that future and all the fun that comes with that.
I'll make a motion to ratify the professional service agreement as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Jenny, are you going to stay around for the remainder of our? Because I'm
Yes.
going to have some little discussion and committee reports regarding our meeting yesterday.
Sure, I will be here.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on then to our committee reports and administrator update, and we'll start to my right today with Commissioner Mojo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last week I attended the Veterans Volunteer Appreciation Christmas Dinner. What they have going in terms of volunteer support and time commitment is really a phenomenal thing, and it's very clear that that is a close-knit family, so I was glad to be able to attend that. Kurt and Jennifer are doing a great job over there, so kudos. I also attended our final meeting of the Diversion Task Force yesterday. As you've probably heard through the news, we were able to come to several good consensus points in regards to recommendations to the Diversion Authority. The governors will be working on a final report on some of these alternative plans, and then that'll go to the Diversion Authority and technical teams for further investigation and discussion. I just want to say I'm extremely appreciative to both governors and the Minnesota DNR for their involvement, as well as the North Dakota Water Commission. I think Grant said yesterday, it's really something that shows that there's a goal to get something accomplished, and to have two governors spend as much time in Fargo-Moorhead to reach a solution really shows their dedication. So I'm glad that I was able to be part of that process. I do have some of the recommendation maps. If any of you are curious, I can show them to you, but that concludes my reports.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Williams?
I also was at the Veterans Service Volunteer Party on Friday night, and Jenny mentioned it. It was a great event, and the enthusiasm continues with the volunteers for that organization, so it's a good thing for the county and for veterans in our county. So then yesterday I was at the all-county meeting on the detention service agreement, the new agreement, and had a great turnout, and Kevin did an excellent job with the meeting, and Steve and his staff. It was pretty apparent from the meeting that all our partners in that operation understand, the great work that's being done by Steve and his staff, and I think they get it, and they're very appreciative, and everybody was very supportive of the new agreement. So, and then I also attended yesterday during the afternoon the task force on the diversion. So Jenny already talked about that, so that was it for me.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Gross?
The only meeting I had was the juvenile detention that Grant has already talked about too, and I just got to echo. I mean, that was just a great presentation that was given by Steve. Did a great job. The answers that were, the questions that were asked, the professionalism that was Steve and Jenny provided, the great answers, and the way you ran the meeting. It was just a great meeting. It's one of the better meetings I've been at for the county, and I think you guys did a great job, and thank you very much for putting that on. And I think all the 11 counties that were there were satisfied with the answers and saw that this is a good deal for the county. So it was a very good meeting.
Very good, thank you. Commissioner Haney?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On Friday, I attended the Veterans Service Volunteer Christmas Party along with Commissioners Whalen and Mojo, and I echo the same sentiments. It was very touching and very noble to be in the presence of those people that give a lot to help their fellow veterans, make their appointments and all the different things that they volunteer to do, and help in the office there mostly is what they do, and that was very nice. And then the 11 county meeting, I attended that yesterday for the Regional Juvenile Detention Center Expansion Project. I thought the presentations by Jenny and Steve and moderation by you, Kevin, was up top shelf all the way around. And the reception of the different commissioners from all over that was well attended was very, very nice to see that support. And they asked the right questions, and you had the right answers, and there wasn't any stammering or hemming and hawing. Everybody knew what was going on, and they liked what they heard, and so did I.
All right, very good, thank you.
One more that I
Okay,
forgot
right.
to report on
Sure.
last Friday. I, because of our Truth and Taxation meeting being in the evening, I missed Lakes and Prairies, and because I'm the chair, there were some things that I needed to go over on Friday the 8th, so just basic updates in terms of things going there that I had on Friday. Thanks.
All right, very good. Well, I'm glad to hear there was a good turnout for the Veteran Service Volunteer Party on the 8th. I had another commitment and was unable to be there, so I'm glad that there was good representation by our board to say thank you to them for their service. I had of course, we had a jail construction meeting, but both because Grant and I both went in the afternoon to the diversion task force meeting. Brian, I'm assuming you'll give a report on that. And then the juvenile detention all-county meeting yesterday morning. I want to really give a shout out to Stephen and his staff for the preparation, not only, and Darren for your help in setting everything up over there. Thank you for that. It was a full house. I was surprised I don't think there was an empty chair in the place, and it was a really good dialogue, and I think I think the people, all the member counties knew there that an expansion project like this is a significant undertaking, and that we as a county needed to have some financial assurances that we were going to have partners moving into the future to pay for that. And I think it was well received and accepted by all member counties, and it turned out to be a really good move on our part to invite all those commissioners. We had a wide variety of questions from different commissioners from different counties, and I think we satisfactorily answered all those questions for them, and so we're one step closer to resolving some overcrowding issues that we have with our juvenile facility. Jenny, I want to ask you, Jenny Smarza, thank you too for your work in the important agreement that we're going to be doing. But yesterday, all counties wanted to have that. Some, as you know, we're meeting by the 19th. It's going to be their final meeting to vote on it. And I know you asked me yesterday afterwards regarding the question on the Schedule A. How did you ever decide on how you, because Schedule A, right now it's a template of what will happen once we have the final construction numbers, and so I think we want that to be part of the cooperative service agreement. But when we send that out there, they need to know that it's not the final numbers. So have you come up with a way to do that?
Yeah, I did a draft last night, and I think there's a couple different ways that we can do it. I was hoping to get a bit more guidance today before we send that out, but I mean, we have to pass something, so we could pass the Exhibit A as it exists and then have it amended when final construction pricing comes in, or guaranteed maximum price, whatever marker we want to set. Or we can just say that it will be, Exhibit A will be approved by the advisory board later. So there's two different ways to do it.
Okay.
So I think we should just talk about that a little bit and see what makes the most sense, but I want to get that out today to the member counties, so.
Okay, so is that something that you would like to meet with after on this?
If we
maybe
could.
With, and Brian, would you, we have a highway traffic meeting, but I don't think that'll take very long, but.
Yeah, it won't take very long. I just had a couple ideas, and I thought I'd like to get feedback before I, put one or the other in the final version.
Okay, well, I think we need to resolve that today. And then, all right, so thank you. We'll work on that after. And then then I also attended the task force meeting yesterday afternoon, and I certainly agree that to have both governors come and spend as much time as they have on this project, I think there's certainly some opportunities there to see this project advance forward. And we'll as a member of the Diversion Authority, I'm sure we'll be taking a close look at those recommendations. Some of them we've known about for a long time through the technical group that had been meeting prior to the task force. So anyway, thank you, Commissioner Mojo, for serving on that. Brian, we'll go to yours.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just spent some time towards the end of last week in regards to water depths, in regards to the consideration of 35 to 37 to 39 feet. Jason Benson was working with Houston Engineering, and I was working with Dave, and the three of us were communicating back and forth in regards to what the effects would be on going to 35 feet up north. And I think I talked to a couple of the commissioners in reference to that too. And I know that was a point of discussion at your task force meeting as well. So it looks like things can be done. more cost involved, but some things will happen in regards to it. The construction on the on the two buildings is going along, again, just very, very smooth. The change orders, he's going to be, there's been some committee-approved change orders in the last 2-3 meetings that we've had that are now going to, I asked him to bring those forward in a official change order so we can get it up to date for the county board. But Jeff Reed, the project manager on site, just went over, spent quite a bit of time on the schedule, and everything is on course, and I think you have copies of that. I can certainly give you a new one, but he lays that out for about 4 weeks in advance, and they're looking at putting in the windows in the new law enforcement center within the next 3 weeks or so. They would, and then there was quite a bit of discussion as to does the veneer brick need to be done before those are put in, and there's advantages and disadvantages to both of putting them in before the brick is finalized, but he said there's caulking that goes in between, so they can do it either way, but he talked quite a bit about that, and the roof will be finished fairly soon on the law enforcement center. They're just finishing that up, sealing it up on the correctional facility. Talked about there's panels, there are precast panels that are that need to be set. There's 2 or 3 that are left out so that they can move in the precast cells, and he expects that to be buttoned up in January, so all of the precast cells will be in by that time as well. This week they're doing the final pour on the flooring in the correctional facilities. There's quite a bit of masonry work that is being done in the correctional facility that separates the walls or the hallways and the walls and things. So there's just a lot of work all the way around there. It's still on schedule and not any major hiccups at all. It's just really, really good. So,
thank you, Brian. On those projects, I had gotten a message from Mike Hewlett, who had served on our committee originally, and he's out of town. He's going to be coming back here for a couple weeks, and he asked about it and was wondering about a tour. And you know, so it made me think that maybe what we should do is try to plan a tour for those people who served on that committee to start to see some of the work that's been done, and you know, I mean, they'll certainly be interested and invited for an open house once it opens or whatever. But I think it would be good for us to let them know we haven't forgot about their hard work, and ask them to come and see how it's progressing along.
Sure. We haven't been overburdened by tours at all, and I think I've only gone on 2 of them. So
I have yet to. Well, I've been on outside ones.
She makes fun of my the way I pronounce tours.
Yeah,
so
well, you do say
I have to be careful.
Yeah, you do say it.
So that's what she's giggling about over there.
Tour. Tour.
So we'll set that up.
All right. So and maybe if we could do it, when the snowbird's back here for.
So it'd be
this
earlier
month.
this spring. Or this month.
Yeah, later this month.
Oh, before they leave.
Yeah.
Oh,
before he
okay,
goes
sure.
back, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
For those who are here, I know I guess he's coming back. That's why I suggested.
Oh, he's coming back.
Yeah, he's
okay.
coming back for a couple of weeks. All right, we can talk about that after. Brian, do you have more to?
Well, just one more thing on the juvenile discussion. I guess we did spend more time last week in trying to finish up that, and I'm really glad that things really went well in regards to that. So we've got a couple small issues. But am I hearing that it's okay to proceed with the campus improvement committee has met in regards to the rent change, because there has to be really a shuffle around with quite a few buildings, and we're progressing very satisfactorily with that, and I'm assuming that I'm getting the head nod to continue that with Georgia, because we've met with many of the departments in order to make this all happen.
I got no indication yesterday that we're gonna have any counties wanting to opt out.
Okay.
So you know, knowing that that's there, I know you've been working with our architects and our construction
Georgia,
engineers
yeah.
to try to keep that price in line, so I think we've done all we can, but we need to keep moving forward with.
And we had some major savings. It was a little higher than what we were talking about out of the chute, but I think we all have to remain flexible in regards to that. Keep the cost down, but we've got to do it right too. They started talking about using the used heating mechanisms and things, and we just said, hey, that defeats the purpose of the remodel, and we don't want to go there, so.
And you know, we've reported quite a bit on yesterday's meeting, and I did want to give a thank you to Carrie from our architect firm, and also Lance Munson from Construction Engineers, who was also there and talked a little bit about their company and what they do too. So it all went well. All right. Anything else, Brian?
No, thank you.
Colleen, you have anything for us today? Jenny, additional items?
No, thank you.
All right, and we will be adjourned.